Today we're talking about properties of real numbers, and if you can look at page 54 to 55 in your textbook, we're just going to read through them, then we'll try identifying some different properties. Right here, properties of real numbers. So we're talking where A, B, and C are numbers. Okay, remember variables, mean it could be any number. So the commutative property of addition. The commutative property of addition says that A plus B is equal to B plus A. This means that you can add in any order. If you add 3 plus 7, what does it equal? It equals 7 plus 3. But 3 plus 7 is 10, and 7 plus 3 is also 10. The commutative property of multiplication says that you can multiply in any order. So we're multiplying A times B is equal to B times A. We're using numbers. 3 times 7, 21, and 7 times 3 is also equal to 21. Okay? The associative property of addition says that when you're adding more than two numbers, so in this case if we're adding A, B, and C, if we add A and B first and then C, it would equal the same thing as adding B plus C first and then A. If we're using numbers, if we're adding 6 plus 4 plus 5, if we add 6 plus 4, 10 plus 5 equals 15. And if we add 4 plus 5, which equals 9 plus 6, also equals 15. The associative property of multiplication is the same thing, except that instead of addition, it's multiplication. So if we're multiplying A times B times C, and first we multiply A times B, and then multiply times C, we get the same thing as first multiplying B times C, and then times A. So if we're using numbers, 6 times 4 is 24, and times 5 is 24 times 5. It's 120. If we multiply 6 times 4 times 5, and we multiply 4 times 5 first, which is 20, and 20 times 6 is also 120. The identity property of multiplication states that when you multiply any number times 1, it equals that number. So for example, 6 times 1 equals 6. The inverse property of addition says that for every A, there is an additive inverse negative A, such that A plus its additive inverse equals 0. What does this mean? This means that when we're adding a number plus its opposite, it equals 0. So 5 plus negative 5, are 5 and negative 5 opposites? Yes, negative 5 is the additive inverse of 5. That means that when we add them, they equal 0. The inverse property of multiplication states that for every A, when A is not equal to 0, there is a multiplicative inverse of negative A such that a multiplicative inverse of 1 over A such that A times 1 over A equals 1. In other words, when we multiply a number times its reciprocal, it equals 1. Do you see how 1 over 5 is the reciprocal of 5? So let's say we multiply 6 times its inverse, its multiplicative inverse, which means it's reciprocal. What's the reciprocal of 6? 1 over 6. This would equal 1. Let's see how. 6 over 1 times 1 over 6. Can we cross cancel? Yes. We cross cancel 6 with 6. 1 times 1 is 1. And 1 times 1 is 1. It equals 1. Okay? The distributive property is the property we worked with yesterday. Do you remember how we were distributing the number that was being multiplied times the parentheses? The distributive property. The multiplication property of 0 states that for every real number, n times 0 equals 0. In other words, any number times 0 equals 0. The multiplication property of negative 1 states that when you multiply a number times negative 1, it equals its opposite. So, for example, if we multiply negative 1 times negative 5, it equals 5. If we multiply negative 1 times 5, it equals negative 5. See how it equals the opposite of the number we're multiplying by? So we're multiplying negative 1 times negative 6. What does it equal? It's 6. It's 6, the opposite of negative 6. But we also know that a negative times a negative equals a positive. We also know that a negative times a positive equals a negative. So these are the properties of real numbers. Now let's try identifying a few of these properties. So if we have 9 plus 7 equals 7 plus 9. If you look at the list of the properties, name the property that the equation illustrates. Why? Belen? Okay. That makes sense. It's saying that if you add 9 plus 7 or 7 plus 9, it equals the same thing. What's 9 plus 7? 16. And what's 7 plus 9? 16. So the commutative property shows us that the order in which we add doesn't matter, right? What if we have d times 4 times 3 is equal to d times 4 times 3? What property does this equation illustrate? Associative property of multiplication. Why? Luis, can you tell me why? So just when we're multiplying and we're multiplying two numbers first, and it's all multiplication, does the order really matter? No. We would still get the same answer. What if we have t plus 0 equals t? What property does this equation illustrate? Identity property of? Why? Because it has 0? When you add any 0 plus any number, it equals that number. What if we have negative q is equal to negative 1 times q? What property is illustrated here? Look at page 55. Multiplication property. Multiplication property of negative 1. Because when we're multiplying a value times negative 1, it equals its opposite.